So what are some personality traits that you think are pretty abundant in like the local scene? Like what differs the Cannibal Grove shows versus the shows like this?
As I said prior, a lot of blue collar work, not attitude, lifestyle, and people know that they're one of their ways to escape is to get out to something, music they enjoy, music that's fast, aggressive, really makes people happy. You know, you put up with a lot of nonsense throughout the week. That's one big factor, I feel. There's also just, I mean, Buffalo's supposed to be the city of good neighbors, so by default we're not really nice to each other. But just the openness of people talking. At Jeff Standish's last show that I played here, there's a handful of young kids that I never saw before. They had X's on their hands, so I knew they were young, and I said hi to them and, you know, introduced myself. And then I found out later they shop at Music Matters, which everybody needs to check out. Music Matters in Niagara Falls. It's a very, very awesome record store with a huge selection of metal. 527 Cayuga Drive, Niagara Falls, New York. And the kids were customers there, and they said, "Hey, this guy Eareckson, he introduced us. Yeah, we met him." So that kind of thing where you include people really goes a long way, and will make people feel like, oh, they want to come back. They want to come back to more shows. They want to be part of something because they feel welcomed.
I think back to like when a similar moment like that happened to you. I guess, how did you first hear about the underground stuff? Was it being in bands? Or?
So, I had this exact day. I was told at work by a guy who was in the metal scene. He's 20 years older than me, and he was in a band called Midnight Symphony, and he told me that there's a band I might like called Fireborn. This was 2005, so I looked on the internet, and oh, this weekend Fireborn's playing the day before Memorial Day. So I said, cool, I'm gonna go check them out. So I got there, and then a different band was on first. This band was called Where She Wept. They're gothic, doom, very keyboard, very My Dying Bride-esque. So I saw their last couple songs. I ended up buying a CD from them. I loved them. But while Fireborn was playing, a couple members of another band that I saw previously several times called Confirmed Kill, they came up to me and said, "Hey, you were at our last show." They just said hi. We just started talking. I was this awkward 19-year-old kid who didn't know anybody, just enjoyed seeing metal live, and that's when I started to form friendships, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Also, there was an old band called Herod. Herod had Greg from Sepulphile, Greg who used to be in Sepulphile. He was in this band Herod. They were pretty much the closest thing to Iron Maiden and Judas Priest I could think of locally. And I was wearing a Megadeth shirt, and a couple members of the band said, "Hey, Megadeth, cool!" And I was like, "Oh my god, I just went to this concert, and like, these guys in this band are talking to me. This is awesome." And so that's how I got to know Greg from a show at Broadway Joe's in 2005, because I was wearing a Megadeth shirt. So that's how I started to meet people around here.
Okay, you brought up Broadway Joe's. I never went there. Bring up just like that venue specific. How did that, mold its way into like the Buffalo scene?
Broadway Joe's, they just happened to have a guy, Mike Dietzman, who booked a lot of metal shows, mostly local. Actually, the guitarist Scott from Fireborn was the logo for his Overdrive production company back then. Scott is now in a band called Of Desolation. They're a melodic death metal band. So he started, and he was another one that when I went to his shows, he really just reached out and introduced me, and he was one of my very first friends in the Buffalo scene. But he always booked at Broadway Joe's. And sometimes bands would play there that weren't Mike Dietzman shows, but Broadway Joe's was known as a place where metal bands could play, and they would host almost any day of the week. I know I had a couple shows at Broadway Joe's play there. One fell through somewhere else, and Hellgoat from Atlanta, I was told, "Oh my gosh, this show fell through." I was like, well, Broadway Joe's didn't do anything. So the day before I booked it there, and they were super nice about it, and all they asked was just a small cut for the sound guy, and the show was great.
Was it like a spot like this, or how would you, I guess don't categorize it as a venue that's somebody that hasn't been to it. Was it like
Definitely a dive bar with a stage. We'll say that. Not quite the meme of a hardcore band where they literally have a single plank of wood in the corner. Not quite that. They did have a legit sound system. I did play with a 6-piece band on there several times, so it could fit. It was a little bit cramped, but it could fit. It was a little bit smaller than Mohawk Place stage, but there was a giant pillar in front, which was almost became comical because depending on where you sat, you couldn't see a third of what was going on stage. So it was known as the Broadway Joe's Pillar. There was even one time, I think it was Greg Burt from the Music Productions wanted to raise money to rebuild Broadway Joe's to get rid of the pillar. That's how big of a deal this was in obstructing the view of the audience. But it was somewhere where a lot of bands could play metal shows quite often.
okay?
I believe 2014 was its last show. Yes.
I know the Forum was a thing too.
Ooh, the Forum was a great attempt. It did not start out as a metal venue. I believe it started out as a jazz club of some kind. And they had a lot of also varying genres of music. But they decided, Brian Pattison made friends with them, I believe, the owner, and they did host a handful of metal shows, but it was unfortunately too out of the way for a lot of people to go. So some of these metal shows would be big, like Diamond Head played there, and what happened was the day of, if they didn't sell enough pre-sale tickets, the owner just said, all right, the show's free for everybody else who wants to come, so he could fill the place. And so I saw a couple free shows there. Wehrmacht was another one. I think that was just free in general as long as you got a ticket, just because Brian really wanted that venue to be packed. So that was another one. There was not exactly a Day of Death, but when Baphomet from Buffalo, legendary Buffalo underground death metal band, they played a show at the Forum. That was packed. That was a big death metal fest. Cardiac Arrest played, Seplophile played, a whole bunch of bands. So those were a few of the highlights, but unfortunately it just couldn't sustain itself because it was so out of the way for a lot, so it didn't last more than maybe 3 years.
I'm trying to think of any other venues that were like here and then left. What else?
I named the funeral home already. Ooh, that was like way back when, but okay, sure.
What is Club Diablo?
Club Diablo was a place where it was cool. It was really small, but it was a place where, personally, before I became, my whole life revolved around the metal scene, I went to a lot of punk shows there, and there were just a lot of punk shows, some metal shows going on there, and it was called Club Diablo. It was a very devilish themed bar. There was a lot of cool spooky decorations, and everything was a red tint, and they had all sorts of drink specials there. El Diablo, which I believe was 7 different kinds of liquor for $7, and I drank one and I was done for half the night. I remember me and a friend drank 2 of them, and I was supposed to play, and I think I gave a very, very subpar drumming performance that night. Did my best, but anyway, it was cool. The owner ended up just getting into other ventures, but I did have my 26th birthday show there, which was One Way Terror, Pig Rectum, Kane, and Hubris. And so that was an awesome show. That was in 2012, and I believe less than a month later, March 10th, I believe, was its last day open, March 10th, 2012. But that was a very cool memory for a lot of people.
So the last one I would wrap it up with is, how would you encourage someone to come see what the scene has to offer? What it says to you about it?
So I could say go check out a show, but a lot of people won't know. So you could ask around. Social media does allow people to talk to other people if they want to find out. Message event hosts, message bands. There is Mike Marlinsky has the metal, which he covers a lot of local, not local stuff, but he does concentrate a lot of Buffalo, Rochester, New York State area metal, and he does put together playlists online as well. I believe they're on SoundCloud, and so it's a good way for people to discover music in the area of a lot of bands, most of them still being very active. And then if you discover something you like, you can go look for them online. People got band camps and Facebook pages, and I would say that's probably the easiest way to do it, because Buffalo's got so many events going on, metal and not metal, that it's very hard. It could be very hard to navigate. So again, check out Music Matters in Niagara Falls, 527 Cayuga Drive. That dude Rob, he's awesome. He tries to support the local metal scene. He has flyers he gives out to. If you come in and you buy an Anthrax record, then he'll say, oh hey, check out this show coming up. So that's something. He'll have information about it. Other record stores in the area, let's see, there's Frisbee's on Elmwood. I don't think they have so much. Someone else can say that. I don't think they have Frisbee's. They might have some info. They have they're more of a CD store, but they have a decent amount of metal mixed in with them, and the guy knows a few people. Let's see, Record Archive, that place rules. And Dan Wilker used to work there. You don't need to put that in there. Well, honestly, I'll just keep it to the two